But it would be a mistake for us to make the assumption, well, Sammy Tippit lives life the way he preaches. I mean, there's some. I'm not saying that you're a hypocrite.
Sammy, this podcast is going down.
No, you struggle at the same place, and you admitted that. There are places that you failed, that you struggle. And I think of the scripture in 2 Corinthians where it says that the Jews' hearts are hardened because Moses would put a veil over his face so that they might not look intently on that which was fading away. He had been up on the mountain with God. And so as he came off of the mountain, there was this glow, a radiance of the power and the Spirit of God upon him. But he didn't stay in that state. And he didn't want the people to see that he didn't live in that particular state. So he put a veil over his face. And so there became that bridge between this is the commandments of the Lord, and this is me as a person, and I don't really live up to that, but I'm going to pretend like I do because I don't want other people to notice that I'm not.
And this whole thing of transparency is, I think, such a critical issue. I did a book once and interviewed Tom Elliff, and the area that I interviewed Tom, Tom, he was former president of the Southern Baptist Convention, and I said, Tom, in a local church setting, what do you think the greatest hindrance to revival is? And it was very interesting. He said the lack of transparency in the pulpit. And I think not just the pulpit, but I think in leadership in general, and that the lack of transparency. I'm going to ask all of you this question. We'll go around with it, but to start with you, sweetheart. What keeps a person? What keeps you? What makes it difficult for you to be able to be honest with me, or to be honest with our kids, or to be honest with the people you're leading? Because I think I heard Shirley say something that was real interesting. The example, we are to be an example, but the example we're to be is real. Real people. In other words, the example is, okay, when you do fail, how do you deal with that? So I think the starting place is transparency. So what your reserve, and you, so it's difficult for you. What helps you to practice transparency?
I think one of the reasons for me not wanting to be transparent is fear of disappointing others. And, I want them to see Jesus in me, and I know that I do fail, and yet when I do, I think, oh, they're going to have a distorted view of Jesus, which isn't true. Although it is a testimony and witness. I think that's probably the thing that I struggle with the most, is that
fear.
The fear.
And how do you deal with fear? Perfect love casts out all fear. So
just coming to Jesus and saying, I'm human, I've blown it, and come to that person and saying, I just, I have wronged you, or I have had a negative attitude, or expressed myself negatively, or.
I think back to Germany, and we've mentioned Germany a lot of times, because that was for us, that was a watershed time in our lives, in our marriage, where I don't believe we'd be doing what we're doing today. We wouldn't be on this program. I wouldn't be preaching around the world had we not experienced what we experienced in Germany. But I think, and you tell me if this is accurate or not, but I think that you were afraid to talk to me about where you had failed. And when you saw that I loved you.
You still love me,
right?
Regardless.
Perfect love casts out all fear. When you saw that love there, I think that changed everything in our marriage. But because I think you thought that I wouldn't love you, and when you saw that I did love you, that at that point, then it became easier for you.
And ever since that time, there's been. I've still had my reserve moments, but I think ever since that time, I thought, I saw the love of Jesus through you. It wasn't through your power, because I know I'd hurt you, but it was through saying, okay, Jesus, you've forgiven Sammy, and now Sammy, through that forgiveness, has forgiven me. And so it enabled me to be able to be more open and more transparent across these years. And
the reverse was true. I don't want people to think that in this discussion that only you had failed me, because I had deeply hurt you and failed you, and there was confession on my part. But it was.
And part of it was the lack of communication. Is me not sharing, and then.
You see, with you it was fear. With me it was pride, because I was always right, and I always had the answers, and God just had to break me. And whenever you took that step of faith to share with me, that released me to be honest and open. And what kept me from honesty at that point was pride.
And I think one of the things that a picture again for me is that whenever we try to share in our early marriage, and you were so strong, which was one of the things I love about you, because you're so passionate about where you stand, and at the same time, that strength in you, it caused me to withdraw. It's like a turtle. I was like a turtle. I withdrew into my shell, and I thought, I can be right and him be wrong, and yet he still wins the argument. So I started withdrawing, which was not right on my part, because I wasn't being honest with you. I think that's part of the fear, that you just withdraw because you don't want to be hurt. You don't want to, and so that. But the Lord's turned that around too.
Yeah,
so it's been good.
and the relationship has grown. We've still had our problems and our struggles, but I think there's been a what I would call a blockage that was torn down, a stronghold, a barrier, a wall was torn down at that time. You guys, I know that, I think I was a pastor at that time. I've been an evangelist for the past 20 years, and I was an evangelist 10 years before that. But I think sometimes it's harder for the pastor and his wife to be honest and transparent. Would you say?
Jump in there. Yeah. As I said to you, maybe just a time ago, I think from Shirley I have learned more about transparency and more about discovering the grace of God, the mercy of God, the love of God, the felt love of God, from that place of being able to admit I failed. My performance background, which is just so saturated with pride, I mean, I think some fear text really is just the low side of pride, but it's still pride. You get the boisterous big mouth, I can do it, and we can see pride in that, but sometimes it's still pride, because it's still about me. It's all about me. It's all about me. It's the low side, the hidden side. And anyway, I got off on that, but this one taught me by her own example and by her confronting of me that, and she would just say, can you ever be wrong? I mean, can there ever be a contrary opinion?
Gentle and quiet spirit.
Can you ever be wrong? And I mean, the answer to that was obvious, but it was that I always had to have an answer. I always had to have a direction. I always had to have a goal. And she just, for a while there, she was just pretty relentless. And I know we're struggling with that, where she would just, she just have to say, I think there could be another opinion on this.